All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us on our next training in our boot camp series on bulk loading data to Arctos. So bulk loading is essentially just moving multiple records into Arctos at the same time in batches. So you might be using bulk loading as your main way to enter records, just as a general data pipeline. But it's really particularly useful when you have something that's digitally born. So for example, if you have field notes, or sorry, a field collection or a donation that has accompanying spreadsheet data, generally it's going to be a lot easier to bulk load and that data and be more efficient versus hand entering it. So I'm sharing this data entry screen. So this is our last training. And so highly recommend just being familiar with this screen as you bulk load data. It's really going to give you a sense of how you're going to be formatting your information for the bulk loader. And it's always handy to have the screen open as you're formatting that spreadsheet because it's going to be an easy way to do lookups, for instance, for, taxonomic names or agent names, higher geography, checking all the drop-down menus, anything that has controlled vocabulary, you're going to have an exact match of that format in your spreadsheet. So this will be helpful to note, this has capitalized letters and no spacing. And if you don't format it exactly as you see in the main entry form, it's going to throw an error in your spreadsheet. So always have this open. So basically, I'm going to share a recent donation that we got with you. So I'm just going to walk you through how we go about bulk loading data. So this is a donation I got from some partners of some salvaged herps, primarily snakes. And you can see, there's about 11 columns in this spreadsheet, pretty much basic occurrence data, where and when these were collected, by who. We've got some other life stage information, when these were collected, the exact hour, and actually identifiers. So these were all photographed and uploaded to iNaturalist or Herp Mapper. So some identifiers associated with this spreadsheet. So this is all well and good, but we will need to map this to the Arctos format in order to move it into the database. So our first step is actually going to be going to a tool called the Bulkloader Builder right here. And so when you go to the Bulkloader Builder, you will be able to format your Bulkloader spreadsheet to meet your data needs. And so first I want to point out that there's this nice hypertext that's going to lead you to just sort of a quick reference guide to the different fields. It's not exhaustive, but it will be just helpful to look up and quickly know, what this field name essentially means. So you'll get a description. You might be able to click out to the documentation or the code table values and just get, I think I just opened a new browser. So, and also again, between that documentation and your basic data entry form, you'll also be able to quickly link to the handbook, to field documentation, or look up code table definition. So between those two resources, you should have a pretty good sense of what each field header means and be able to have a good start. So there is a way to see the complete bulk loader in Arctos. I don't recommend it, but I will download it just to show you. The full template is going to have, I believe, well over 1,100 columns. So I don't recommend starting with the entire spreadsheet. That's just going to be overkill. So what we're going to do is we're going to customize this template to really limit the fields to what we're actually going to be inputting. So on this form, if I scroll down, this is going to be how we toggle on and off what fields we'll download in a template. And again, if I don't do anything, it's going to be, the full suite of fields. So it's going to be, over 1100 values. Again, that's going to be little bonkers. So what you should do is start here at this counts. So right here, you'll see each of these sort of rectangles map to the main data blocks in the data entry form. So you'll see things like identifiers, identification, collectors, events. And if you go back to the data entry form, you'll see these same types of data blocks here. So this is where you'll control how many columns you essentially see. So just thinking back to the template, the data that I have to input in terms of identifiers. Remember, we had the iNaturalist and herp mapper numbers. I also did have basically I'm going to call it the collector numbers present in that spreadsheet. So I'm going to put a count of 2 for those identifications. All of my specimens just have one ID. Identification attributes, I'm not going to use that for this instance. Determiners, I'm going to put 1 because I'm working with 1 donor. Collector count, I noticed there's about 4 collectors in that spreadsheet, up to 4 for these specimens. Locality attributes, I don't recall. I'm going to put 1 for now. I can always manipulate this once I download the CSV. Event attributes, I remember there was a timestamp for the hour collected. Parts, I know I'm prepping these as a whole organism and at least 1 tissue, so I'll do 2 parts for now. Attributes, that's where I'm going to record how I'm preserving all these things. So I'm going to leave that at maybe 3. And attributes, so right now we just had life stage data. Eventually I'm going to have sex data, so I haven't actually prepared these, but for our purposes, we'll just put 2 right now. So right now I've then set my counts and I'm going to click refresh with counts. And now you'll see that this list below is a bit shorter. So it's not going to have, over 1,000 options. And from here, I can tweak things just a little bit further. So essentially it's kind of reset these categories to the counts that I've provided. But still there might be some fields that I don't necessarily need. So let me just kind of go through some of these. So I've got identifications, agents. I know I'm going to use those. Localities, I don't have any named localities. So I'm going to just turn those off and I can toggle them off individually, or I can click on this left side to toggle off kind of the suite of fields. I'm not going to use any sort of depth. These are all roadkill. So I'm going to, so for instance, if I toggle off the left side, it's taking away elevation as well. I don't think I have elevation data, but I will go ahead and just keep that for now. Coordinate. So here, I get the full options for all coordinate types. I just need decimal degrees, so I'm going to toggle off degrees, minutes, seconds, and UTM, and just a few other fields that I don't believe I'm going to use. I don't think I have habitat. Oops, I don't think I have habitat information. So you can just kind of look. It's fine to leave in if you're not sure if you have that type of data. Just leave it in and you can keep that in your CSV and upload it as empty column or actually delete that column prior to upload. And so everything else looks good. So once everything looks good, I'm going to go ahead and get that CSV. And so now we see this formatted and it's a little bit more manageable now. So I have gone ahead and already mapped this data into a CSV. So here we are. So this is now me populating that data. Again, I've said that I actually haven't prepared these specimens, so I'm just using this as an example for our purposes today. So I'm highlighting things that I still need to actually add. But you can see fields that should feel familiar. So I've got my GLID prefix, my login name, I have my accession formatted how it needs to be formatted. So again, I was looking at that catalog entry, the record entry form in Arctos to make sure I have, the brackets placed around my GUID prefix. My record type, again, it's formatted exactly how that drop down control vocabulary looks like with a uppercase, P and S, no space. So you will have to be, it's finicky, right? So it's binary code, black and white. So you really do have to make sure you're carefully entering things in the format that's expected for the handler. And so now we'll see that things are a little bit more atomically structured. So we had those herp mapper and iNaturalist identifiers. I've gone ahead and actually pulled the full URL, so that will actually make that dynamic link out to these different repositories. And if you've ever used identifiers before, the default for these relationships are going to be self, right? So I don't actually have to put that. That's just going to be a default value. However, I do have one where this was a photo observation of the roadkill that came to us. It was a range extension. So we actually got this photo before we got the physical specimen so that someone could publish a herp note on this. And so this is already loaded as a photo observation in Arctos, and now this physical specimen will get loaded, and those two records will be linked in a relationship called same individual as. So I've noted that there. And you can see I've had my second identifier types entered, my scientific names, the date of the identification in that ISO date format. So if you've ever worked in Excel, you know that it likes to reformat these when you save as a CSV. So I do recommend, if you are working in Excel, I'll say Sheets is better about this in general, but I tend to save that CSV, that template I download from Arctos as an Excel spreadsheet until I'm ready to bulk load it, and then I'll save it as a CSV, and that way I can close and open this and work on this as many times as I want without these dates reformatting over and over. So especially if you have a big load and you're kind of working, over many days and opening and closing this document, yeah, recommend working in the XLS format. I've got my collector names, and you'll see in my original data set, these came with ampersands, one column. A lot of these didn't have, abbreviations. So I have gone and, some of these folks I'm familiar with how their names are formatted in Arctos, but more often than not, I'm going in here and, typing out Hunter. And, this is Hunter D. Johnson. Sometimes he just has Johnson in there. So I'm pushing tab. I'm seeing a duplicate. So there's a project to merge, but I can see his name is formatted with the middle name. And so that's why it's nice to have this form open. So you can just really quickly do these formatting checks. But you see these are all pulled out into separate columns, separate agents. And I have quality checked all these name formats. Higher geography, again, is going to be one of those where you're formatting based on our gazetteer. So it's going to have, if you're in the US, the US, the state, and the county with county written out. I've got my specific locality information. And then you'll see I have some empty fields here. Elevation, turns out I didn't actually need those fields. So I can go ahead and keep those in. If there's an empty column, the bulk loader will handle that just fine. I can just as easily delete it too, no problem. I've got some highlights. I'm waiting for some information from this collector in terms of how the coordinate data was derived and some error values and things like that. So these are highlights for me. This will be fine for me loading this today. But I've got our coordinate data, our coordinates. Again, these were in one column before. Now I've got those parsed. And yeah, just I think nothing else too noteworthy. I'm just making sure that all of my data maps to Arctos. So again, my life stage information, that's a code table. So I'm making sure my values match our code table exactly. And again, I don't have my parts in here quite yet because I still need to add tissue information, but I'm formatting my preservation to the anticipated preservation type. So this is what it looks like. So this bulk loader is 54 columns long. So we went from 11 to 54. So it does take manipulation to get things nice and standardized for Arctos. So when I feel satisfied with this, I'm going to save it as a CSV, and I've already done that. And then I'm going to navigate to our tool directory, and in the data entry portion, I'm going to bulk load catalog records, and that's going to bring you to this form. And so there's nice information here, so we'll kind of go over this, but essentially there's two steps to bulk loading. So the first step is just getting that spreadsheet into Arctos and into the staging table. And so that's the first validation, and that's just a simple step where it's not looking at sort of the values in your fields, but it is making sure your column headers are compliant with what Arctos is expecting to see, the Arctos formats. And like many tables in Arctos, this is a shared table. And so you'll see there's a little bit of notes in here that essentially this table can be occupied by another Arctos user. So there is a little bit of an etiquette you should be aware of. So right now I can see no one's using it. If there was a user currently bulk loading data to Arctos, there'd be sort of information down here with their name, a timestamp of when they started loading data. And so etiquette is everyone has 30 minutes to kind of move their data into the staging table. And then from the staging table, it will actually move into your own browse and edit screen where the data gets validated further. And so if you look at that, if someone's in there and it's been 30 minutes, then you can go ahead and email them. Their email will be provided. And then they basically have another 30 minutes to respond to you. So hopefully they get your email, they move out their data out of that staging table. If you don't hear from them in 30 minutes, it is totally okay. You can then download their data as a CSV, you'll attach it to GitHub, and then you'll basically just tag them and just let them know, hey, I need to give you the boot. I need to get my data in. And that's perfectly acceptable. So just, follow that etiquette, give folks essentially an hour. And then it's totally appropriate for you to go ahead and proceed with your own data. So step 2 we'll get to in a moment. That's the browse and edit phase, but we will go ahead and choose our file. And I have purposefully misrecorded one of the column heading names just so you can see what an error looks like. So this is my CSV. I'm going to go ahead and try to upload this, and I'm getting an error. So this is what an error will look like. So error, the detail, which sometimes these can be difficult to use, but sometimes they're pretty simple. So look, I have accidentally named one of my column headers with an extra D. Usually if you're downloading from that Bulkloader Builder, you're not going to get one of these error flags, but I will say if you're doing a lot of find and replace or text to column, some of those data manipulations, sometimes you'll lose some of these underscores easily if you're just highlighting a full column. So just something to be aware of. This will work if maybe you're missing a required column, if something's misnamed, or if you have duplicate columns. So sometimes, let's say you thought you had 4 collectors present in your data set, and then you just copied and pasted a 5th collector column, but didn't rename it to like 5_5, and it just has 2_4s, you might get this error flag. So just be aware. So I'm going to just quickly fix that. And rather than opening this spreadsheet, my CSV, if I open this right now, it's going to reformat my dates. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to open with my notepad. And this is a easy way. Sorry, let me drag this over. This is an easy way to do little tweaks without, oh gosh, let's see if my computer will let me drag this over. There we go. This is a way to do easy little edits without fully opening a spreadsheet. So a little tip. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and reload this file. And now it's gone, so it's past that first check. Now we're going to go through some validation steps. So you will go to this Bulkloader Home button. Oops, sorry. Yeah, sorry. And now you can see this is what it will look like to someone else. If they're going to bulk load their data right now, they're going to see that I'm currently in there. Here's my timestamp. So now I'm on the clock. But don't be nervous. So you go ahead and click validate. And what this is going to do is it's checking your data at a more granular level to make sure it's compliant. So it's finished that job. I only had, I think, maybe around 50 specimens, so it's really quick. You can, I didn't cover this, but you can bulk load several thousand records at once, like 5,000, 10,000 records. So that validation step will take longer the larger your data set. So it says, if you're seeing this, then things have happened. So we're going to return back to this home page and we're going to check the status. So we'll see what errors fell out. So right now I can see that it, oh, see, I think I had, I had one more, planted one more error in there, but that's okay. It checked 45 records and it found one error. So this is a taxonomic name that's not matching what we have in our sort of taxonomic name dictionary. So this is either a species that's new to Arctos or it's misspelled, and I can tell you this is misspelled. I had planted a hidden character as well, but maybe I somehow resolved that. So I'll show you. So you have two options here for fixing any issues. So you might have any number of issues. If it's your first load and you're doing a really large data set, you might very well have, hundreds of issues, or maybe if you have an agent that you're using throughout the data set that's not present in Arctos or is a slightly different format, you might have an issue on every single record, but it's one fix. So it can vary. But you have the option to essentially, download your spreadsheet to see where those errors are occurring, if they're really pervasive throughout the data set, and then go ahead and fix it, re-upload. But if you only have a few errors, it's really easy to do a little edit in the grid. So this is going to essentially show you a flat version of your data. And so I've pulled this in. And so this status is a column that you'll leave as an empty column when you're uploading your spreadsheet. So you'll see here at the beginning, I have a status column. So you'll always have that, and that's just empty. And this is where the errors come back. So everything that says checked looks good. So I'm just going to sort this. And you can see here, here's my identification error. So then I can just go ahead and scroll to that column. And this is a big bulk loader, so I like a control find maneuver. So I'm just going to go ahead and find that name. And so I'm going to fix that right there. So I can actually just double click and do minor little fixes right there in the screen. And that's the only time this name appears. And so I have fixed this spreadsheet. I did have a little, if you have hidden characters and things like that, it will come up here, and you can search for, it'll tell you at least the column name that it's in, and often they'll appear, with that black diamond of doom with a question mark, and you'll be able to see those easier in here. If you work in Excel, you can use clean and trim to clean those values, but sometimes it doesn't totally strip out some of those characters. So sometimes it's easy to see in this form. So now that I've made that fix, I'm going to go back to my bulk loader home and I'm going to load to main. And so now I get this remark. these are now in my browse and edit table. So I'm going to delete from the staging table. So this is really important because you're holding up space for someone else to go ahead and proceed bulk loading their own records. So you'll definitely want to always delete from the staging table. And you'll get a little, "Are you sure?" message. Yep, delete away. And so this is going to, you can navigate here to that browse and edit screen. Again, it's going to take a second to load. And these are in there with some other records that I already have hanging out in my browse and edit. So I'm going to filter to show you my freshly uploaded bulk loaded records. So you can see status. Now I know where it came from, whereas other things in here, either I've entered or the student has entered. So now I'm filtering to just get that specific view. Another way to get to this screen is on your tool directory. You can go to browse and edit, and that's going to take you to that same screen. So from here, if I realize, oh, I want to standardize this remark across all the records, I want to do some key little changes, you can click that edit key, and all of the data that's entered is going to be highlighted. And so you can make little tweaks and adjustments as you see fit, and then save edits. And we covered a lot of this kind of editing and actions in our last training. So I recommend just checking that out if you have questions about this screen. But essentially, all your data is present, and you can go ahead and proceed to load it if all looks well. Presumably you've kind of formatted it, everything as you see fit already. And so you'll go ahead and just, filter it however you need, and then you will go ahead and say load all selected records. It's going to give you a basic sort of table summary of what's present. And essentially, will then just click auto load. I'm not going to click it because I have not actually prepared these specimens. And then it will, give it some time. Sometimes it takes 10 minutes to get things into Arctos. Sometimes it takes an hour or two, just depending on all the other functions that are happening. But then they will load, and they will be present as records, and you can go ahead and view them and edit them in the Arctos environment. So I think that's all I have prepared. So if you have questions, go ahead and let me know.